Hello friends, welcome. This is Dr. Neeraj Kazmi and this is my new video lecture, and today I'm going to talk about total parental nutrition in preterm neonates. So a few days back, one of my students back in Pakistan, he asked me a question that total parental nutrition is considered to be a very complex subject, and can you just simply guide us on how to calculate or prescribe total parental nutrition, especially in preterm neonates, in a very easy method? So this lecture is going to focus on the TPN, how we calculate TPN in preterm neonates, and I'm gonna explain it in very simple 5 steps. So just 5 steps, and you will master how to calculate TPN for neonates, and the same formula applies for preterm neonates. So we will be using an illustrative example how to calculate that, and that would explain the concepts to you. So let's start. I will start with giving you a small introduction about TPN. Now, total parental nutrition, as the name says, total parental nutrition. So basically what it means is that we are giving nutrition through a route other than the gastrointestinal tract. So we know our nutrition consists of macronutrients and micronutrients. Macronutrients are proteins, carbohydrates, and fats, and micronutrients contains your trace elements. It contains your multivitamins and so many other things. So normally in neonate or even in preterm neonate, if they are tolerating oral fluids, breast milk, express breast milk, or preterm formula milks usually contain enough macronutrients and micronutrients which are enough for the baby's growth. But many times, especially in neonatal intensive care unit, because of the comorbid conditions like a preterm infant being born, and let's say if he is suffering from respiratory distress syndrome, or he has got issues with his breathing, he may not be able to tolerate oral fluids, so we have to put them on total parental nutrition for a few days, and that makes it quite important for you to understand how do we calculate the TPN requirements for neonates. Now keep it in mind that TPN is usually prescribed where we think because of the underlying condition of the baby is not likely to be fed for at least 3 days. So if we think that for the next 3 days the baby will not be tolerating oral fluids, or because of the underlying condition, like for example if he's got respiratory distress syndrome and he's on a ventilator, of course then in that case we have to give TPN. Many times preterm infant neonates might be having necrotizing enterocolitis, which is a very severe life-threatening condition of the gastrointestinal tract. So in that case, again, we have to use an alternative route, and for that we use TPN. And there are so many other conditions as well. So in that conditions, TPN is used. Now TPN itself requires specialized solutions, and these solutions, which contain amino acids, which contain high density lipids, which contain minerals and so many other things, they have to be mixed together and then administered intravenously. Again, it depends on the route. Some of the TPN can be given through peripheral veins as well, but most of the time we use the central routes through which the total parental nutrition is given. So I will start with a very simple case example. So let's say we have got a 5 days old preterm neonate, and this neonate was born at 28 weeks gestation. He weighs at the moment 900 grams or 0.9 kilogram, and at the moment he's on mechanical ventilation because of breathing related issues. For example, he's got respiratory distress syndrome. So because he's on a mechanical ventilator, we have to give him total parental nutrition, and now the issue is to calculate his TPN requirements. So keep it in mind, it's a preterm infant. He was born at 28 weeks gestation. He's 5 days old now, and his weight is 900 grams, and we have to calculate the TPN, total parental nutrition. So moving on, to make it, I mean, TPN, if you go through different textbook of pediatrics, there are different methods by which the TPN fluids are calculated. And most of the time for doctors, it is considered to be a complex subject, and that's why it's usually left to the dietitians or nutritionists to look into the TPN requirements, and they usually go through all these formulas, and they give you that what would be the requirements for a particular baby in terms of his amino acid requirements, his lipid requirements, his dextrose requirement. But nevertheless, even as a doctor, there are 5 steps. Okay, if you follow these 5 steps, it makes your life very simple, and you can easily calculate the TPN requirements. So these 5 steps are: number 1, you have to calculate the total fluid requirement. So you must know, the first of all, how much fluids does the baby need in 24 hours. So once you know how much fluids he needs, then you have to calculate. Step number 2 is to calculate the amino acid requirement. Step number 3 is to calculate the lipid requirement. Number 4 is to calculate the electrolytes requirement. For that, the important one are the sodium, potassium, and calcium. And finally, last but not the least step, is to calculate the dextrose requirement. So we leave the dextrose requirement at the end, because we have to calculate how much of the lipids, amino acids, and electrolytes in terms of mLs would be used, and then the leftover is used for dextrose, and then we can adjust the concentration of the dextrose according to the amount of fluids which we would be giving in 24 hours. Now, please keep it in mind that, again, when I say that these 5 steps are simplified, what it simply means that this is one of the most simple methods to calculate the TPN requirements. I mean, in real life, conditions are more complex, because most of the times, if you are giving TPN, so these babies, whether they are preterms or whether they are term babies, they would be quite sick, and they would be getting different types of other drugs as well. And most of these drugs are given in some form of solution. So there would be some fluids going along with the drugs as well, so they also have to be adjusted. But let's say if we take those things away, then it's very simple: total fluid requirements, and then with that you calculate the amount required for amino acids, lipids, dextrose. These are your macronutrients, and then for the micronutrients, they are the electrolytes, which is the sodium, potassium, and calcium, and minerals as well. One thing which is mineral is also added to the TPN. So let's start with calculating the total fluid requirement. Now, the total fluid intake for neonate, if it is a preterm, is usually done according to their body weight. So for premature, usually we start with 80 mils per kg per day, and then we slowly build it up. So we start with a small dose, like 80 mils per kg per day. This is the total fluid requirement. On day 2, you increase it to 100 to 110. Then on day 3, you can increase it to 140 to 150 mils, and then you can increase up to 160 and 170 mils per kg per day. For terms, we use the slightly lower requirements, and again, you should know preterm babies have got more requirement as compared to the term babies because of the insensible water loss. So anyhow, there are different tables which are given in different textbooks of pediatrics, and they can be used, depending on your preference, whatever book you use. More or less, there is usually, about 10 or 20 mils differences given in different tables, but nevertheless, the general rule is the same. So let's say, because the example that we have used to illustrate our case was a preterm baby who is now 5 days old. Okay, so on day 5, I just assume that he needs 150 mils per kg per day. So this is the requirement for a preterm who is 5 days old. Now, in our scenario, the baby weighs 900 grams. So in order to calculate his fluid requirements for the whole day or 24 hours, so we multiply the requirement with the body weight in kilograms. So 900 grams is equal to 0.9 kilograms, and we multiply it by 150, which is the 150 mils per kg per day is the requirement on day 5. You multiply it and you get 135 mils. So this baby has got a requirement of 135 mils, which he would need in the next 24 hours. So this is the 24-hour requirement. Now normally you have to give, because he would be having a central line, this fluid you do not have to give it as a bolus. This has to go in 24 hours. This will go slowly. So you have to divide this 24-hour fluid requirement by 24 hours. So you multiply 135 by 24, that gives you 5.6 mils per hour infusion rate. So once you make up your TPN, this would be set at a rate of 5.6 mils per hour. So it will go very slowly. So 1 hour passes by, you would be having 5.6 and 5.6 in another hour, and so on and so forth. So in 24 hours, by the end of that day, he would have 135 mils. Okay, so this is the first step, that we have now calculated the fluid requirement for the 24 hours. Now in step 2, we'll go on and we will calculate the amino acid requirement. Now remember, we cannot give proteins as protein molecules to the baby, because if you give protein, large molecules in the blood, they can invoke a severe allergic response. So that's why we have to give proteins in their very elemental form, which are the amino acids. So essential and non-essential amino acids combination, it usually comes in 10% solution. So we've got pre-made amino acid solutions, which are 10% solutions. So 10% solution simply means that in 100 mils of that solution, you have 10 grams of amino acids. Or in other words, simply 10 mils of that solution would contain 1 gram, or if you go by ml, then it would be 0.1 gram per ml. So you can do your maths and you can calculate that. Now the recommended amino acid intake is 1 to 3 gram per kg per day. Again, it depends on the condition. You can start with 1, you can give 2 gram per day, you can go up to 3 gram per kg per day. So let's assume our the baby that we have taken in our case example, his requirement is just 1 gram per kg per day. So because he weighs 900 grams or 0.9 kg, so we multiplied by the amino acid requirement per 24 hours, and that would be 0.9 into 1, and that is equal to 0.9 grams per day. So the baby in our example, he needs 0.9 grams per day. Now this is the grams. Now as I told you that 1 gram is present in 10 mils of solution. So 0.9 mils, 0.9 grams of the amino acid would be present in 9 mils. So because by the end you are taking you would be drawing the infusion, you will be drawing the solution, and then you'll be putting it in the total solution. That's why whatever calculations you make in grams, you have to calculate in the volume. So 0.9 gram is simply equal to 9 mils of 10% amino acid solution. So your baby in this particular case 0.9 grams of amino acid in 24 hours, and that equals to what? 9 mils of this 10% amino acid commercial solution that is available in the market, or that is used in different hospitals. Moving on to step number 3, that is calculating the total lipid requirements. Now lipids, intralipids or lipocene, they usually come in 2 strengths, 10% and 20%. Again, 10% lipid contains 10 gram in 100 mils, 20% contains double the amount, that is 20 grams in 100 mils. And again, if you calculate it per mils, that would be 0.1 gram in 10% and 0.2 grams per mil in 20%. Now, again, it's very simple. As we talk about proteins or amino acid, that the requirement is 1 to 3 gram per kg per day. The same goes for lipids. You can start anywhere from 1 and you can go up to 3 gram per kg per day. So again, for sake of simplicity, we assume that the baby in our case, he needs 1 gram of lipids per kg per day. And again, because he weighs 0.9 kg, we multiply it by 1. That would give us a value of 0.9 grams of lipids. And again, if we are using 10% lipid solution, this 0.9 gram would be equal to 0.9 mils, or if we are using the 20% strength lipid solution, then it would equal 4.5 mils of the 20% lipid solution. So you have calculated now the lipid requirements as well. Now we move on and we calculate the electrolytes and the multivitamin requirements to be added to this TPN. Now, the important electrolytes are sodium, potassium, and calcium. Now, the sodium requirements are 3 milliequivalents per kg per day. So remember, sodium is 3, potassium is 1, and calcium is 2. So it's as well 1, 2, and 3. So if you start with potassium 1, you go on to calcium 2, and sodium is 3. So just remember 1, 2, 3. 1 is potassium, 2 is calcium, 3 is sodium. So you know, sodium comes normally that we use is 0.9% sodium chloride solution, but it does come in half strength sodium chloride as well, which is 0.45, and we've got the hypertonic one as well, which is 2.7% as well. But again, for the sake of simplicity, I'll just go through 0.9% sodium chloride, which is a common solution available everywhere. So remember, as far as the 0.9% sodium chloride solution is concerned, 1 milliequivalent of sodium is equal to 6.6 ml of this 0.9% NaCl solution. So just keep it in mind. Okay, so 1 milliequivalent it would be equal to 6.5. Now, the baby, let's say his requirement is 3 milliequivalent. So you multiply 3.3. You multiply 3 into 0.9, so you will get his requirement. But at the same time, you know that 1 milliequivalent is equal to 6.6 mils. So if we do the calculation, 0.9 into 1 into 6.6, it comes out to be 18 mils of 0.9 sodium chloride solution. So you will need 18 mils of NaCl solution. Moving on to potassium, the potassium solution that we have, 1 milliequivalent of potassium equals 0.5 mils of that solution. So again, if we are giving 1 milliequivalent per kg, so we multiply 1 by 0.9, and again we multiplied with 0.5, which is the amount of solution, so that would be equal to 0.5 mils of potassium solution. Calcium usually comes as 10% calcium gluconate solution, and 1 milliequivalent of calcium is equal to 2.17 mils of calcium gluconate solution. So again, if we do the math, 0.9 into 2 milliequivalents multiplied by 2.17 would be equal to 4 mils of calcium gluconate. So now you have calculated that for 1 milliequivalent of potassium, you need 0.45 mils of potassium solution. For 2 milliequivalents per kg per day of calcium gluconate, you would need 4 mils of calcium gluconate to be given over 24 hours. And for sodium, you need 18 mils of 0.9% sodium chloride solution, which needs to be given over 24 hours. Now, minerals, multivitamin mix and other things, they just come as a mixture, and it's very simple. It's 1 mil per kg per day. And again, you multiply 1 with 0.9, so you will get 0.9 mils of multivitamin mix. Okay, so in step number 4, you have calculated the electrolytes and the multivitamin requirement. So for this baby who weighs 900 grams or 0.9 kilogram, we need 18 mils of 0.9% sodium chloride solution. We need 0.45 mils of potassium solution, and we need 4 mils of calcium gluconate along with 0.9 mils of multivitamin mix. So by this stage, we have calculated the amino acid requirements. We have calculated the lipid requirements, and we have calculated the electrolytes and the multivitamin requirements. Now, if we add all this up and subtract from the total requirements that we calculated in step number 1, we would be left with the fluid that we can use as dextrose solution. So let's move on to step number 5, and we have now the last step is to calculate how much dextrose we need to give to the baby in 24 hours. So the formula again is to calculate dextrose requirement. First of all, you need how much fluid you will give for dextrose. So already you have calculated total TPN in the first step, which was in our case was 135, and now you subtract the amount of amino acid, the amount of lipids, the amount of electrolytes, and the amount of multivitamin and minerals from it, and you will be left with the amount which you can utilize for dextrose. So 135 minus 9, so we were using 9 mils for amino acid. If we used, let's say if we are using 20% lipids, then we need 4.5 mils of that 20% lipid solution as we calculated in the earlier step. we would need 18 mils of 0.9% sodium chloride. We would need 0.45 mils of potassium solution. We would need 4 mils of calcium gluconate, and we would need 0.9 mils of multivitamin mix. So if we add it together, all this comes out to equal of 36.85 mils. Now you subtract this 36.85 from 135 and you are left with 98 mils. So this 98 mils, you can utilize it as a dextrose solution. Now the only thing is, first of all, you need to understand what is the requirement for dextrose for term or a preterm infant. Normally for term infants, the requirement is around 4 milligram per kg per minute, and for preterms, usually the bit more amount is needed, and we can go for anywhere from 4 to 8 milligrams per kg per minute. Now this is the requirement. You can start with 4, or you can go up to 8, or you can, depending on the condition, you can start with 8 as well, but usually the upper limit is 12 milligram per kg per minute. So you should not be moving more than 12 milligram per kg per minute of dextrose. Now if we look, now this is the requirement per minute, so we have to calculate this milligrams of dextrose required per minute in, like, you know, for we have to calculate this over 24 hours. So what we do is we multiply it by body weight, and then we multiply it by 1440, because there are 1440 minutes in 24 hours, like 60 into 24, that comes out to 1440. So let's say the baby in this case needs 8 milligram per kg per minute. Okay, so his body weight is 0.9, so we multiply 8 by 0.9, and then we multiply it by 1440, which is the number of minutes in 24 hours, and that comes out to be 10,368 milligrams for 24 hours. So now this baby requires 10,368 milligrams of dextrose over 24 hours. But normally, I mean, we know when we are using dextrose, it comes in solution. Like, you know, dextrose comes as a 5% dextrose, or it comes as a 10% dextrose, or it comes as a 12.5% dextrose, or it comes as 25% dextrose, or 50% dextrose as well. So we need to know how much concentration of the glucose is required for that. For that, the formula is the glucose required in milligrams multiplied by 100 divided by the glucose fluid, which is the amount that you would be using for the dextrose multiplied by 1000. So the glucose required in this particular example is 10,368. So 10,368 multiplied by 100 divided by the glucose fluid, which is required in this case, that is 98 mLs, multiplied by 1000. This would come out to be, if you do all this math, this would come out to be somewhere around 10.2%. So this baby would require 10. Or let's say we simply make it simple. Okay, it's 10% dextrose, and he would need 98 mils of this 10% dextrose. So now normally when you are making up these fluids, so what you do is, now you take 9 mils of the amino acid solution, you take 4.5 mils of the lipid 20% solution, you take 18 mils of 0.9% sodium chloride, you take 0.45 mils of potassium solution, you take 4 mils of calcium gluconate, and you take 0.9 mils of the multivitamin mix, and with that you add 98 mils of 10% dextrose. Where did this 10% came from? We use this formula, that is the glucose required, that is the, you know, the milligrams of glucose that you calculated, times 100 divided by the glucose fluid, that was the TPN minus all the other fluids, multiplied by 100, and that would give you the exact percentage. So this baby would need 98 mils of 10% dextrose. So you add up all these things together, that would become 135 mils of all this total fluid, and you divide it by 24, as we did in early stages, that would be 5 point something mils, 5.6 mils that would be required per hour. So you mix all these things and you start the baby on this solution, and this would be good enough to take care of all his nutritional requirement for the 24 hours. So after 24 hours, every 1 or 2 days, you simply review the requirements and you add it to that, because you need a positive nitrogen balance and you want growth. So again, as I said, this is a bit complex subject, but tonight to make you start in this field of TPN, I have just described these 5 steps which would make it easy for you to calculate the TPN. So as I said, step number 1 is to calculate the total amount of fluid, which, as I said, like, you can use the charts, then you multiply it by body weight, and that would give you the amount of fluid that would be required in 24 hours. You divide it by 24, that would give you the hourly rate. Then you calculate the amino acid, the lipid, the electrolytes, and multivitamin requirements, and finally you calculate the dextrose requirement, and then you add up all this and you start as an infusion, and you give it on hourly rate for the 24 hours, and then you review. At the same time, you would be testing, you will be taking bloods, and you'll be looking at different parameters to see that, sodium, potassium, and all these things are within their normal range. There are other things as well, like the preterm infant who is born. Normally, we don't give them sodium or potassium in the first 24 hours because there is usually a diuresis and the baby is losing weight. Again, you can read it in any textbook of neonatology, and that can further clarify your concept. But just as I said, to make it very simplified, we do these. If you do these 5 steps, you will have an idea how we initiate TPN in term or preterm units. So thank you very much for listening. If there are any questions, comments, you can always ask me. I'm always available. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye.